fun part is going to see if the Wi-Fi in this room actually picks up well enough for us to do it. Hey, everybody, this is Ronnie DeBulsey for UGAsports.com. I'm joined by Trent, Jed, Lance, the entire recruiting staff, guys, at UGAsports.com. Of course, Paul and Bobby's here. Yeah. Paul's watching, and then we got Patrick upstairs, probably trying to swipe through Tinder, I guess. Find something that he can do. So, folks, we apologize. The audio is a bit weird, and the video is a bit weird. It's not great Wi-Fi at the Marriott. I'm a little disappointed in the Marriott downtown, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Guys, real quick, let's go in reverse order, if you will. Georgia misses out on CJ Wiley. It's kind of a big one. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's one that even though we said earlier this week that we felt Georgia was in a good spot, I don't think anybody really knew. I don't think this is a spot where CJ Wiley told any school it was coming until or right before his announcement today, if he even told anybody at all. We really thought it was Georgia and LSU, and he picked up the Florida State hat. And Dane Young was there, and he said there was like a shocked silence in the crowd. I think it surprised pretty much everybody that was there. So it's a little reminiscent of the KJ Bolden one last year. I think CJ and KJ, having talked to both of them, they're two different guys as recruits.
Yeah.
But CJ did say, my recruitment's still open. I haven't signed anything. I'm probably still going to visit Georgia because it's right down the road. So it's not over, but definitely not the direction we thought this one was going to go today.
Yeah, I would be. I've told Jaden I'd be surprised if he ends up signing with FSU. Based off the remarks, it sounds Florida State was that last visit. It sounds more like a visit high. Coming off he had his decision date before he took that visit to Florida State. He was coming off visits to Georgia and LSU. Georgia and LSU have kind of been the front runners with LSU. His parents both going to LSU. Georgia being kind of the in-state school that's been there for the longest, and then FSU pops up out of nowhere. So I don't think this is over. I think it's far from over. We'll see. We'll see where he gets to into July and into the season, the fall season. I think this is going to go to signing day.
Last visit?
So this kind of reminds me of something I said on last week's show. We were talking about all this buzz about Jirbo Boulder, who ended up committing to NC State. He comes to UGA. He loves UGA. It sounds like from what we hear, he's going to commit. Yeah. And I remember saying on last week's show, I'm like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like, this might just be kind of what Trent said. Like, this might be like a high. And it turns out that it's a little bit different situation. Boulder ends up at NC State, where he's projected to go. But, he rode that UGA high for a couple of days. But, it's one of those things that's it's caught me personally a little bit out of shock because I thought that it was just Georgia LSU in the race. But like Trent said, sometimes this happens in recruiting where, they get, they go to a school, they hear what they want to hear, and they end up pulling the trigger.
Well, that's what we talk about Georgia doing all the time. We're like, look, if Georgia can get this kid on campus, it increases your chances tenfold. FSU got him on campus last weekend, and all of a sudden, boom, they're in it. FSU didn't know. None of the FSU writers were there. Yeah. A lot of the Georgia people thought that he was coming there. The folks at Milton told us he's going to Georgia. Yeah. Folks within the program at Georgia thought they were going to get him. Thought they had stood a really good chance. Midweek, I heard we got him. I put in a future cast at that point. Then all of a sudden they're like, hey, do you know if anybody else is going to be there? So they kind of hedged their bets. Once Dane put up the live feed and I saw the hats, I'm like, son of a bitch. Beat up LSU hat on the right. Pristine, mint condition FSU hat in the middle.
It's all about hat placement.
It was over. So the quotes he gave Dane Young about, I'm committed there for now, didn't even know the name of the school.
Yeah, he said the
University of Florida State.
Yeah, University of Florida State.
Which again, hey,
it happens.
I would be nervous.
Yeah.
How often does he do stuff like that? Yeah. Hell, I make 7 or 8 mistakes on the show every time we do it, so I get it. The point is, it'd be easy to go with. And he did a little tomahawk chop. I get it. But I could see a situation where he's not KJ Bolden. That's not it. But I think everybody around him expects him to be wanting to go to Georgia. He knows they're disappointed, so maybe he's like, well, I'm just committed there for now.
Well, and
He
again,
might.
we talked about, like, his parents went to LSU. There's so many connections there. And LSU has come on so strong in the last, like, month to where Georgia, that was the main threat within Georgia, the Georgia program. That's who was viewed as the main threat. So it's not necessarily a shock that he didn't pick Georgia, although that's how we thought it would go.
Yeah.
It's more the shock that it's Florida State. The Florida State thing really came out of nowhere this afternoon. So it's a shocker.
So we're here at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. We've got 104 of the
We're all walking through right now.
the best players in the nation are all coming through as we speak. So a lot of Georgia talent. If you weren't on UGAsports.com today and checking out all the updates, these guys did a ton of work. I just sat around drinking coffee and fighting with the internet.
It was cold.
Yeah, froze my butt up all day. So it's 13 degrees in here. The Wi-Fi sucks. Marriott, we're platinum members. You got to do better. You got to do better than that. But we're going to have a lot of video updates from the players. Check out our TikTok channel. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got lots of stuff. But tomorrow, all these guys are going head-to-head. We're going to have races and lifts and one-on-ones and position drills. So we're going to have a lot of updates from those guys. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for all the updates at UGAsports.com. You can't miss that. All right. We put in a new future cast for Georgia when it comes to wide receivers. They might miss on CJ Wiley, but they might get somebody else.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about it, Trevor?
Yeah, Tyler Williams. As a wide receiver out of Florida, I think he's transferred schools. I think he's at Seffner now.
Armwood and Seffner.
Armwood and Seffner. He's 6'2", another good size receiver. Would fit the mold for what Georgia's been going after in this class. I think Georgia staff's high on him. This is not a reaction to the loss of CJ Wiley because we were told a couple hours before the announcement that this was going to take place, that he was going to, an announcement could be coming soon. We'll see when that announcement comes, but we like where Georgia stands for Tyler Williams moving forward, and we like that before CJ Wiley announced his commitment to Florida State.
Yeah, and I had a story on him, on Sunday. Yeah, it feels a little bit later in the week. It's Tuesday, but yeah, I spoke to him, and the headline was he moves up from Georgia, which is exactly true. And we get this news literally 3 hours before the CJ Wiley's commitment. And when I was talking to Tyler on Sunday, he was telling me because he visited, was it 2 months ago?
Yeah, for spring practice.
Yeah, and he's a James Coley kid that Coley was recruiting at his previous stop, and he's another underrated kid, South Florida. You always talk about give me a kid out of South Florida. He's what is he? 6 foot 6'2",
6'2", 190.
6'2", 190. And when I was talking to him, we talked to a couple of these receivers today that just passed by, and I was like, what do you think of Georgia's offense? He goes, Georgia's offense is great for a wide receiver because the run game opens up the pass. And he compared it to a lot of different NFL offenses. And I'm like, it's a pretty mature kid. He knows. It sounds like he knows what kind of offense he wants. And he was like, I could potentially see myself playing in this offense one day.
Well,
he's close.
We get that quote a lot. I can see myself playing there, and you could get Jay and go, yeah, well, everybody can see themselves playing in Georgia. Hell, I can see myself playing, fullback in Georgia. But are you going there, young man? Are you going there? And I think that there's enough that, and if they get Tyler Williams, I think they still go after CJ Wiley. I don't think it's done.
Yeah, I don't think it's
done. No, I don't think it's done either. And I think, like you said, I think CJ Wiley is one of these guys that you don't give up on. I mean, he's a guy he's got size, he's got speed, he can catch, he can do it all. But if Georgia does land Tyler Williams, that gives you 3 with him and Talon Taylor, who's actually here this week, and Thomas Blackshear out of Savannah. So that gives you 3. And then if you flip CJ Wiley, do you go harder and try to get Travis Smith? Landon Rolden's the guy that we've talked about a lot, took an official this weekend. So one of those guys gives you 4, and another one of those guys would give you 5. Do you hold out for a late bloomer to take 5. You save that spot for a portal guy. There's a lot of different things you could do. I think they want to get to at least 4. Yeah. And obviously landing Tyler Williams would get you one step closer to that and one more guy from hitting that quota that you want to get.
All right, let's talk about somebody they did get. We're driving down last night, and we knew Dontrell Williams was supposed to announce.
Dontrell Glover, too.
Yeah, Dontrell Glover. But we're doing this in reverse order. Let's go. All of a sudden, it's like, now you had told us
the day before Isaiah Gibson
is coming.
Yeah.
You got a story ready. You got graphic, and you've been telling us that he's flipping back to Georgia for months.
Yeah.
Jed's told us kind of the same thing. I'm the only guy's like, there's no way you're going to get a Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin and Isaiah Gibson. I'm just being Mr. Negative. And look at this smarmy grin there. I told you. And boom. Not quite a week after he decommits from USC, Isaiah Gibson.
He's back on campus. He's back on campus at Georgia. When I went to go see him at the time that he actually was at practice back in early March or May, he told me that he was going to be up there for the scavenger hunt on May 17th. And then
he's committed during this time.
He's committed to USC at this time. And then 2 weeks later, he was going to return for his official visit. And that was May 31st, June 2nd. What day is it now? He decommits from USC about a week ago.
Last Tuesday.
Less than 20 days later. And then we learn on Thursday or Friday that he's back in Athens on an official visit. And then that's when I hear that the trains, start to put on its tracks and it's rolling. And, I think that some Tennessee people were confident, some Auburn people were confident, but I'm like, there's no way. He's literally going back to Georgia this weekend.
I think the decommitment is not even the decommitment, because we all kind of thought that could happen even when he committed there in the first place. But the fact that because he had an official scheduled to Oklahoma for this past weekend and spurned that and comes to Athens on an official. Not only that, after being at Ohio State for an official during the week. So it's not like he'd been sitting at home all week and it's like, yeah, screw it, I'm going to go to Athens instead. He'd been traveling and still decided to get back to Athens. So, like you said, man, I think when he showed back up, we're like, whether it's this week, whether it's later in July, we think this is going to end up going Georgia's way. And he decided to go ahead and pull the trigger. And he's another one of these guys who has said he could go till the fall or whatever, but he decided to go ahead and jump on board.
And did that TikTok that went viral over the weekend of him, have you seen that?
The only thing I've seen on TikTok is some girl spitting. I'm just.
I'll tell you. No. There was this TikTok. It's these high school players and college player and high school player, and the guy comes up to him. He's like, this guy. Somebody calls, hey, call the most famous person on your phone, and Isaiah goes second. Calls Kirby. Kirby answers. And Kirby's like, don't call me unless you're ready to commit. and then he's like, are you still coming this weekend? And this might have been a few weeks old. He's like, tell your mom I said hi. Kirby doesn't play games and stuff like that.
Again, it's 3 visits in essentially a month between the scavenger hunt, which is a full weekend experience, the official visit, which is obviously a weekend, and then this past weekend, which I'm sure was like another official visit experience as well. So you get back 3 times in a month. Even the people who don't believe in the follow-up visits, they're going to say, it's trending in that direction.
It took 2 to get a decommitment. And then the last visit kind of sealed the deal.
Locked it down.
If you think back, there was another kid that was committed to USC that took 2, an unofficial, then an official, then a decommitment. So Justice Terry.
So Justice Terry, for folks that want to follow this, it was Isaiah Gibson, Justice Terry. They go out to USC. They commit on the same day, right?
Same day.
I think so.
And they got 3 more too. That's
right.
USC did that.
So then last Tuesday, Isaiah Gibson decommits again after his 2 visits, and then he visits and goes. After his 2 visits to Georgia, 24 hours after Isaiah Gibson, 22 hours, Justice Terry decommits. Now, I'd been to see him after his official visit, and I said, hey, we'd heard a rumor that Gibson was going to decommit. And I felt real bad because there was a competing writer out there for USC talking to him. And he said, yeah, I'm going to go see Isaiah Gibson after this. I'm like, ask him about decommitting. And he's like, and I didn't know who he was. He's like, yeah, I work for USC. I cover USC. I'm like, foot and mouth.
Yeah.
Felt bad. But sure enough, I asked Justice Terry, I'm like, what if Isaiah Gibson decommits? What does that do for you? He goes, well, that's completely unrelated. He's him, I'm me. I'm like, oh, okay. So I won't read anything into it if Isaiah Gibson does. 24 hours later, Justice Terry, the number 1 defensive tackle in the nation, number 6 player overall, is decommitted. What do we know about that? I mean, again, I'm not saying they're like-minded, but they damn sure are following each other.
Yeah.
So technically, Justice Terry should be committed in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
Check to see if it happened now.
just following the way they mirrored each other, and they say they're not together, but we see pictures of them together.
Yeah.
They commit together, they decommit together.
To the same side of that, Roddy, I think you went down after his official visit, and you're like, hey, do you talk to any of the other recruits? And, no, I just talked to just talked to a lot. What's his name? Isaiah. That's all the guys we talked to.
Yeah,
so,
he said he doesn't speak to anybody else, and in the USC commitment class.
And while their decisions, may or may not have been tied, they obviously know each other because Manchester isn't that far from Warner Robins. So, and like you said, Trent, Justice visited for G-Day, which was a whole weekend, and he took his official the same weekend as Isaiah did, actually. So when I talked to him this week after decommitted, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to try to get down there in July for their cookout event or whatever. So he told me Georgia's at the top of his recruitment. Florida State's in it. He took an official there. He took an official to Alabama over the weekend. So they're not going to go down without a fight. But we think, again, it's kind of like Isaiah. Even when he was committed to USC, we kind of thought he would still end up at Georgia in the end. And now that he's decommitted, what Justice told me was the whole.
Like I said on the plane with him, coming back from IMG.
He just said, the Georgia coaches see this as one more step in the marathon. I think that's all it is.
Marathon sounds fun.
Right. Yeah. So whether it's while we're on the show tonight, or whether it's later in July, or after he visits, or plans on visiting anyway later, we think he's going to be a Bulldog in the end. It's just a matter of time, we think. But again, Alabama and Florida State are not gonna let that go easy for sure.
USC went from having those 2 commitments, thinking they were going to land Christian Miller, and then thinking Michael Williams is going to follow Christian Miller to USC to
after Bear.
To having 0 of them. Oh, I guess Bear. But
they had Bear Alexander. They thought they were going to get Christian Miller. They thought Michael Williams was to come with him. They thought they were going to get. I mean, hell, they wanted Elijah Griffin. But they got Isaiah Gibson and they got Justice Terry. Now they got Bear. And shout out to Alan Berry. He says a $5 super chat there. Thank you. We will go use that to eat. He says, good evening, gentlemen. Can UGA land the number 1 class? If not them, then who? I know OSU is the leader right now. Georgia was like 8 or 9 yesterday, and then after Isaiah Gibson committed, they jumped up to 4.
Yeah, and listen, we're here at the 5-star event. Yeah. I'm direct. There's a room right there where all the national people have been sitting all day, and I've been telling them all day what my next rankings are going to look like. But like Isaiah Gibson's like 100 and something in the country. He's going to be going way up in my rankings as this goes on. And Elijah Griffin's number 7 and Justice is number 6, something like that. We think Georgia leads for both those guys. Talon Taylor is 29th, I think.
29. Yeah. And with a good performance tomorrow, he might move up.
That's 5-star territory. And you look at some of these other guys. Tavion Wallace.
Another kid.
You look at edge. If they get Bryce Davis on board, he's a top 50, 70-ish player. Nothing's really happened at defensive back yet. Kirby Smart's not going to let that stand forever. So, and running back Byron Lewis is a top 250 kid. If Georgia lands him, who's Monty Chroma's in the top 100, there's all sorts of juice left in this thing. And it only goes by your top 20 commits, I think, right? So there's so much top-end potential, I guess, is the way to phrase it, out there for Georgia right now. They absolutely can land the number 1 class, without a doubt.
And I think the key in landing the number 1 class is landing a couple of those top 10 guys, because the points system is what gets you over the top. And landing Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin, at the end of the day, they're going to be top 15 players in the country. And landing, if you can land both of those guys, it's a long ways. It's going a long ways in landing that number 1 class.
We got Isaiah Gibson ranked 151.
This Jets.
And again, now
it is my fault. And listen, me and Lance have had some difficulties going to see him.
Yeah.
And so these things get personal sometimes, and I'll admit it. There are some personal vendettas out there. I'm not above it.
It's a Warner Robins coach.
But at a certain point, the talent is got to outweigh the bitterness. But yeah, that kid's. I mean, Lance, you saw him. The pictures you took of at that practice you went to. He looks like a freak show. He's probably 6'5" 255, 260 pounds, and only going to get bigger. So
you also see him on the basketball court. I went to his Elite Eight game when they played up in Winder, and how Mike White could use him.
And he's a guy who
he's just athletic, and
has gone from 6 months ago. He'd never taken an actual visit. He's been this team for stuff, but visits for the first time in January. He's back at some point in the spring. Obviously, they commits to USC. So he's taken 5 visits in, not even 6 full months.
It reminds me a lot of Michael Williams from a frame standpoint and how you can use them. And it's kind of convenient that when they were on the visit, they had those guys hosting. Those guys.
And Mike got hosting Justice too.
Yeah.
So I can see him moving up considerably. Right now, it's Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia. Georgia has 15 commits. Alabama has 18, so that's 3 more. Notre Dame, the number 2, they have 21. And Ohio State has 19. So when we talk about the way the rankings work, you count your top 20. Notre Dame's maxed out with 21, so they're already not counting one kid. Alabama's counting 18 players. Ohio State at number 1 is counting 19. Georgia's at 4 with 15. There's no one in the top 10. Well, Texas A&M has 15, but they're 10th. So the top 9, no one is in that high up. And again, your 5 stars are still waiting. So normally we have about 32 5 stars because we say these 1 through 32. A 5-star is a guy who's going to get a first-round draft pick. There's 32 first-round draft picks, so we should have 32 5-stars. So Talon Taylor is sitting at 29. You might have a 5-star wide receiver before it's all said.
Yeah, and again, I mean, if Georgia flips CJ Wiley, or if they land Travis Smith is 140-ish, I think. So again, there's a lot of meat still on the bone.
Zayden Walker's sitting at 31.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, another 5-star.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, another fringe 5-star guy.
I was thinking he was 37, but you're right. Because I had to correct myself the other day. So anyway, we appreciate the super chat, Alan Berry, and I would hope we answered your question. If not Georgia, I'm going to go Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean they're
just what they're doing in NIL is.
And speaking of top end potential, they're right there with David Sanders for starters, talking about the top end guys. So.
Yeah. Speaking of Josh Gell says, I still think David Sanders Jr. is going to go to Ohio State. That'd be another 5-star for them. Yeah. A lot of talk about Meadows, but we did get a question early on. When are we going to hear something from Justice Terry? When is he going to announce? I think it's supposed to be a long time. Right?
I mean, he says signing day, but I don't know if he makes it that long, and I don't know if it is going to be. If it is Georgia, I don't know that Kirby Smart keeps it off the board. Now, the flip side of that is Elijah Griffin is also planning to announce on signing day. So if there was ever a time where you want to line up your dominoes to win the signing day headlines battle, it's signing 2 5-star defensive linemen on the same day.
Just like
not that Kirby Smart necessarily needs to win a headline battle, but
I think it's an awful decision to do that, though.
Wait that long?
Or
to get on board.
Get him in now.
Yeah.
Get him in. Because again, it's with the Isaiah Gibson thing. So he committed, decommitted, recommitted. He's not going to want to decommit and recommit somewhere else. I think if you can get him on the rebound, and people say, well, if they decommitted once, they'll decommit again. Not necessarily. A lot of them have been like, hey, man, I remember when I decommitted. The sheer number of hate I got from that school and those fans wasn't worth it. So if you can get them to pledge, and then everybody knows you're the leader already. Because that's one of the things, if you tell a kid don't commit, it's because we know that when every other visit you go on, all the barbs and arrows will be directed at one school. When you're uncommitted, you have to kind of fight everybody. But when you have a leader or you have a commitment, we all know how to crap on that school. So if you're silently committed, don't tell anybody. Just go on your visits, check out everything, and then come back to us, But I'm like, look, if you're already committed once, you're very unlikely to decommit and then recommit and decommit. It's not going to happen. So if I'm Kirby, I'm like, Justice, you ready to go?
Yeah.
Pull that trigger.
Yeah.
I'll win signing day with an Elijah Griffin.
Exactly.
I only need 1 5-star to win signing day.
Right.
Especially if he's number 8 in the country, and I already got these other 5-star defensive tackles. So
when you look at some guys that I think, what was it, Christian Garrett was supposed to announce on July 20th.
Yeah, Christian Garrett went early. Zay Walker went early.
And so
Dontrell Glover moved his up.
He moved his up. So Kirby's telling these guys behind the scenes, pull the trigger. Like,
hey, Tyler Williams, why don't you go tomorrow after we lost that on CJ Wiley?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's those type of things are they're calculated.
Yeah.
I mean, remember last year about this time, because I was on vacation, all those linemen announced back I think 4 days or something like that. So these things are.
Didn't they have a recovery for when they missed out on CJ Bolden or KJ Bolden?
I don't remember. Probably.
Was that late July?
I think there was
and they had
the next day.
Nate Frazier go early August.
Yeah.
There's a few guys in early August that went. There's like August 6th, Nate.
I get that. So, shout out to Steve Bryant. U.S. Army love them dogs. U.S. Army retired. Thank you for your service, Mr. Bryant. Makes me want to talk about my boy. We need to talk about Dontrell Glover. So we're kind of going backwards from the news. Yesterday, midday, Dontrell Glover announces Georgia. You had told us this was likely coming. You went on the board and said, hey, I want you folks to know I feel as good as Georgia could feel about this kid. What is Georgia getting in Dontrell Glover?
I think Dontrell Glover is just like, he's got, to be as cliche as I possibly can, he's got like the dog mentality that you look for in linemen, especially the interior lineman, the play nasty type of guy. He's got that mentality about him. And he's a road grader. He's whatever. I think he's 6'4", 6'5", over 300 pounds, and can play center, can play guard. And he's already setting the expectations high for the class, because when Gibson committed last night, he was like, "Oh, my class is coming in. We're trying to 4-peat. We're trying to whatever." So he's just got that attitude and chip on his shoulder that you want, again, in a lineman, and especially an interior lineman. That's really going to be mixing that moment. So.
And he was committed to Saban stuff. So we committed to Saban staff, and Georgia wanting him as much as they did. Just kind of shows what caliber player they're getting with Glover.
Yeah, and you look at Glover, and you look at, so Georgia took what, like five, 6 offensive linemen, most
six,
yeah. mostly tackles.
Tackle types.
This year you load up with, what is this?
Short.
Yeah, you've got
Mason
Dontrell Glover. You've got Mason Short, who could end up a guard.
And
they're
what
in
is
good
this?
shape with Cortez Smith, who will be a guard or a center. So yeah, I would think you need more interior types in this class, and
they all played left tackle in high school.
Well, they were. They were
yeah.
heavy. A few years ago, they were heavy guards and no real tackles. Then they had a bunch. Now they get a bunch of tackles, no real guards. Not saying this team currently, because you've got some.
Yeah.
Your interior linemen right now are phenomenal, but when you're working, you can see how it kind of goes back and forth. So they're preparing themselves for 2025, 2026. They got it loaded. Hey, give me a kid out of Langston Hughes.
Pleasant good competition. Yeah.
And
if you can play there, you can play anywhere.
He's got Bo Hughley, former teammate on the team right now, who's telling him what it's like to come in. Not even a high school teammate, who also played the offensive line. He knows what it's like to be under Stacey Searles. He knows what it's like the runs in January, all that stuff. Bo Hughley knows what it's like, and sold Dontrell Glover and hosted him on as official. And it came through in the end. Again, I think his commitment was originally middle of July-ish, and he moved it up to yesterday afternoon.
All right, so I'm trying to remember if we had anybody commit prior to that. Day-wise, no, because we spoke about our last show. We had Talon Taylor commit on the show,
like in the middle.
In the middle of it, which was great for him.
Yeah.
So those are commits. We had a question about who might commit next. Let's see. From Tristram West, Tristram. Good evening, gentlemen. Who's going to commit to us tonight or tomorrow? Usually when we get bad news, Kirby gets one of our Southern commits to commit a day or so later. Who will it be? Go Dogs. So that's kind of what we're just joking about, was that follow-up news. I want to mention a guy that's fascinating to me. We're talking offensive linemen, interior guys. What about a guy who hasn't played football in 5 years. Last time he played was 8th grade. He's been out of high school a year. Didn't play high school football. Played middle school football in 8th grade. But he's 6'11", 330 pounds. Where does he play on the Georgia offensive line if they were able to get him?
Yeah,
and who are we talking about?
I'm going to guess tackle. It's Jirbo Jackson. He's at IMG. Like I said, he hadn't played football, but he's camped kind of at the Southeast over the past couple of weeks. Georgia, Florida State. Took an official to Georgia this past weekend. And coming out of the weekend, we think Georgia's in pretty good shape. We were asking around today. It's so funny talking to everybody down here because no one really knows a whole lot about him.
He's a basketball guy.
He is older. I think he's 19 or 20 years old. He would be, wherever he goes, he would be like a 24 signee, so he'd be like in summer classes and on campus for this fall.
Yeah.
An uncle of his told me today that he's announcing on July 6th, which is, I think, next Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel pretty, Roddy, you put a note out last night, we feel pretty good where Georgia's at. And it's a guy, he camped, so Stacey Searles has seen him up close, and you take a flyer on it, and, you know, if you've got him, you've got a guy with a 90-inch wingspan that's taller than everybody else, and it's all good. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work. It's basketball. Yeah. So then you shoot them on over to the Coliseum, and it's all good.
Worst case scenario.
It's a very interesting, like a late 24 class buyer, because he's going to need time to figure out how to play the game, period, especially at a collegiate level. So not going to play this fall. In all likelihood, he probably won't play next fall, but then you see where you're at with him after that.
And he did play basketball, from what I've gathered here, in Overtime Elite, I believe, in Atlanta. Might have tried to enter the NBA draft. Might not have got a great draft grade.
He did put out a graphic. He applied. A lot of guys apply for the draft.
Yeah. And I don't think he got a good draft grade, but I mean, 6'11". I believe I was talking with Patrick Garvin, our historian, and on the way down here yesterday, if he were to sign, he would be the biggest or the tallest Georgia football player to ever play for Georgia or be in the program. So
I'm just trying to think of a guy who's 6'11", 330 pounds, Amarius Mims is the biggest player I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
This was a guy who could be 4 inches taller than him and 30 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
And like you said, that long wingspan. But the reason I kind of bring him up, why it's fascinating, we were just talking about Georgia has worked, they signed 6 last year, a bunch of tackles, get a bunch of offensive interior guys this year, plus some good tackles, So we just saw Zaire Addison. He said Georgia's still after him. He's committed to Oregon, one of the fastest interior linemen I've ever seen. If Georgia could flip him away from Dan Lanning, I don't think it's going to happen, but the possibility. You can take a flyer on a 2024 guy. You bring him on. It's like, hey, we know you haven't played in a long time, but we've seen you camp. We know there's something there that we can work with. And we're going to work with you on the side over here to get you to – you got to learn, your step slide. You got to learn everything. You got to learn hand fighting. You got to learn protections and all that stuff. But you can't coach that, Hell, I would just make him get off the bus first.
Yeah.
Your Ball State be like, screw it, just give us a check.
Or block field goals.
Block field.
Or run him out at tight end, and kind of like what they really never did with Darnell Washington. Hey, you go stand over there. Not Carson, but it's going to stop.
Dude, and here's the thing. Okay, we talk about it being 6'11", 7 foot. Yeah. If you watch this kid's AAU highlights, he can move.
Yeah.
This is not some lumbering dude. He puts the ball on the ground, dunks, moves great. I thought, this was like, I'm surprised he didn't have more basketball offers because he looks phenomenal. So it'll be fun to watch what he could do. So hopefully that's kind of a long-winded answer to the question, like who might be next. By the way, Mr. Israel says, tell Lance, I said we will finish strong. So there we go. I put on the highlights here on the the description, big commitments and some surprise misses. Yeah. CJ Wiley is a surprise miss. Travis Smith might also be a miss. Travis Smith might go somewhere else. We've talked for weeks about getting CJ Wiley and getting Travis Smith in this class. We've had an update on Travis Smith today. It doesn't sound like Georgia's in it as much as some of these other teams.
Yeah, he told us today that Auburn has really stepped it up a lot. And we'd actually heard some about Alabama this past week, but he was like, yeah, Alabama, they're in it still, but Auburn has really come on strong. And we've been reporting Tennessee has been right in this thing the whole time. So it's very, very far from what it seemed to be at one point, which is Georgia looked like the runaway favorite. I would not classify it that way now. I think it's Auburn, Tennessee, and Georgia's still in it. But I think if you made me pick two teams today, I'd probably say Auburn and Tennessee. But there's still 2 weeks and some change till it commits. I don't think it's a 1-to-1. They missed on Wiley. They're going to turn up the heat on Smith. I don't think the two are necessarily related. I just think there's Smith, there's Roldan, there's Wiley who's still recruiting, obviously. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Smith thing shakes out. Because again, if you're Auburn, getting a splash because you got to rebuild the talent core on the outside there. They had that great class last year. You get Travis Smith, the headliner class this year, and you're in pretty good shape. So it was interesting to hear that Auburn was the one that had really been stepping up over the past couple of weeks.
Now, I will say that we could call that a miss because this is a guy who said Georgia was his leader multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think we probably have a bunch of future casts in for him.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't, it will be a miss. Maybe some miss on our parts. But also, he's not a burner.
Mm-hmm.
So, and things evolve. So, like, the Boulder kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Georgia's looking at him hard. Nolan kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The kid at North Oconee. What's his?
Landon
Roldan. So there's also each week we talk about, hey, they've got 4 or 5 spots, and here's how many possibilities. This morning we didn't think Tyler Williams was going to be a likelihood. Now also we've got a bunch of shots on that. So this is an ever-evolving class. The same thing happens on the offensive line. It doesn't really change a quarterback. You got Ryan Montgomery. We would love to have seen him here this weekend. It just didn't work out. But the comment section is full about what the hell's going on in DB.
That's a great question. That's really a wonderful question because
we would like to know
that. We would like to.
I can't even put them all on here because it would be nothing but comments.
Trent brought it up today.
What's going on?
It's amazing. We're sitting here at pretty much the end of June. Kirby Smart has 1 defensive back committed, and it's a guy in Todd Robinson who, for a while, we thought might end up playing running back. So,
could still end up playing running back.
Yeah, could still end up playing running back. So it's crazy that he hasn't found a safety somewhere. He hasn't found a corner, and obviously they're after guys. They went after Eric Winters, who committed to Auburn, I think last weekend maybe, who was actually here today. Said he hears from Georgia still.
Shamar
Arnaud is here. He's actually committing tomorrow. But there's just so many. Dijon Lee is a guy that's trending away. It seems like Chuck McDonald has committed to Alabama.
Anquan
Fegans is out there. There's so many different guys, and there's not even that one guy that you would say, like a Travis Smith a couple weeks ago, saying we're like, okay, he hadn't committed, but all signs are pointing toward Georgia landing this guy. There's not even one of those. So it's going to be fascinating. And like, how much does it develop during the season? How much does Kirby Smart say, hey, we're going to keep an eye out for the late bloomer, senior tape, whatever guys.
We saw Marcellus Barnes last year from
exactly.
Whatever private school in Chattanooga. And,
yeah,
and he's a Fran Brown guy,
mm-hmm.
but he ended up going to Syracuse. Like, I mean, if Fran Brown probably stayed at Georgia, Marcellus Barnes is probably at Georgia.
And that could happen at receiver too.
Yeah.
Because there was the flirtation with Terrell Anderson late in the year last year, and that seemed really close to cross the finish line at one point. So there's all kind of things that can still happen. The season and practice hadn't even started yet for these places, so much can still. There's a whole month of 7-on-7 and stuff left to go in July. So there's a lot that can still change at most of these positions.
But I don't expect Georgia to go with 5 or 6 defense backs like they have in the past.
Yeah, that's true because you've stockpiled so much.
I think the numbers are going to be lower at the position. They were able to hold on some guys in the transfer portal that they thought maybe were going to transfer out this past year.
Daniel Harris,
Julian Humphrey, so. They were able to hold on some guys. So the numbers in that room are higher than they usually are. So I think Georgia's
They
planning on
just
taking
signed 2 5-stars.
Right.
Yep.
Definitely.
and I think Georgia's planning on taking a lower number. And so I don't think with what you got with T-Rob and Dante and Kirby, I don't think you're going to panic. But with the numbers being lower, I think you have time to evaluate the position further and get the guys that you really want.
One wrinkle that's possible, we spoke with Zealous Hicks today, the #1 safety for 26. Georgia's a top school, all this. And he said reclassification is possible because that was something he mentioned at the Under Armour camp earlier this year too.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, I don't know. He said, I don't know how it got out there, but all these schools have talked to me about it, saying they would take me as a 25 instead of a 26. So could he reclassify at some point, end up in the class? Maybe.
Unless he's been held back a year, I don't want that.
Yeah, Georgia was his first offer.
Most kids have these days.
So there's all kind of pretty close to 6 months exactly until signing day. So a lot can still change.
Dro Swervo Chavez Jr. says, do y'all think the talent and depth that DB we got in last year's class is scaring off this class? And, to your point, Georgia is loaded across maybe not at safety, but definitely cornerbacks and star spots. But the fact that you've got a lot of people talking about Ellis Robinson IV scaring people off, I'm like, yeah. Then KJ Bolden scaring people off, yeah. If you're a 2025 DB, you're like, I'm not starting anywhere over there, Whereas if I'm a wide receiver, I'm looking at the fact they got 5 senior wide receivers at Georgia. Okay, I don't start this year, but it's wide ass open next year, so they're ready to go right off the bat. Who are we missing? Decommitment wise.
Kevin Wynn.
My head's that's another. I don't call it a miss, but it was in my mind.
Yeah.
That was a kid who just seemed.
He loved
Georgia seemed inevitable for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 15 minutes away.
He's and like I said, I've known the kid since 9th grade. I was a little shocked.
Oh, so this is your fault.
I guess so.
So you were talking to him there.
Yeah. This is kind of a shock. I talked to his high school coach last week. I knew that FSU, kind of like KJ Bolden, was his dream school. He grew up. His family loved Florida State, even though he's 30 minutes from Athens. And I think he kind of fell in love with Georgia being close to home, being able to develop him. I know he's got a good relationship with Trey Scott. How Kirby landed on his high school football field when Kirby has a lake house 20 minutes away. Landed the helicopter on the field like twice. Went to go see him, and I guess he just ended up kind of pulling the trigger a little bit early. But that's one that I know that Georgia's already been in contact with him, like as of yesterday. It happened middle of the afternoon yesterday.
Sure.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
You also got to think numbers in the defensive line. You already got Shavers and Garrett, and then you get 2 big boys are Justice Terry and Griffin. So that's 4 guys that can play interior defensive line. Shavers is the guy that can play nose. So do you really want to push that number to 5?
Exactly.
That's where it gets down to. That position.
Anybody else we need to talk about? I'm a little punch drunk because of all the people that.
I was going to say, if y'all ain't subscribed to the Vault, we probably had updates on 20-some kids that came through here today. A lot of 26 talent was here. A lot of 25 talent was here. We talked to a 2027 receiver who's got offers from the whole
44.
world.
Yeah, he's got like 45 offers. Sophomore.
I think Byron Lewis is one that we talked to today that Georgia is in on. He said Georgia's kind of come out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but they had a relationship for a while. It fell off. And then he shows up on campus for an official visit a couple weekends ago.
So basically the reverse CJ Wiley and FSU.
Right.
So
yeah.
We get all excited about it when Georgia does it, but when somebody else does it, we're like, those cheating bastards.
That's not fair. And he said my relationship with Kirby goes way back. Felt like no time had passed there. The relationship with Josh Crawford is new, but still growing. And he talked about his official visit. Georgia spent a lot of time emphasizing off-field stuff, mental health resources on campus, internships, a lot of stuff like that. So he mentioned the schools he took official visits to as top contenders are Georgia, Florida State, Miami, and Wisconsin. So you mentioned Patrick being the historian. Von Miller has Georgia, Wisconsin recruiting battle going head-to-head for a kid. But it's really him and Ousmane Kroma, it seems like, are the 2 running backs. Big targets left. We think Chroma is just a tick higher on the board, but both getting official visits these last 2 weekends of June is huge. So we'll see how those guys shake out, or if some other running back emerges, whether it be a flip or via just popping up out of nowhere.
All right, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, of course. It's the Rogue Shop. I got them on the screen there, so hit them up when you get a chance. If you have sleep problems, if you have chronic pain issues, if you like Delta 8 products, Delta 9 products, they have them. They got a pretty cool thing here, and I'll show you. It's the and if you go to their website, you get Charmaine, one of the owner. She pops up on there, and you can actually just chat with her. So she's around all the time. She'll be more than happy to chat with you if you have questions about it, any of their products. They have a Delta 8 sample pack. They have a Delta 9 sample packs. Those are only $16.99. You should check them out. We have some of their products here with us in Jacksonville. So if anybody can't sleep or you have a pain issue, I got you covered. So you try them out and see what you think. They take good care of us here at the Rogue Shop. So
I had to room with you, so I couldn't sleep last night.
Sleeping 5 minutes after you said that.
yeah. I don't know if I'll ever go fall asleep.
It looks enticing.
So we got you covered.
It's legal too. So.
We appreciate Goat Dog, P. Rich, Tristan, Marvin, Dr. Gonzo. Dr. Gonzo said, any chances of Justin Terry joining Isaiah Gibson and UGA? We kind of discussed that early on. We appreciate it. Ed Toth says, nobody's really committed until the pen hits the paper. That don't even matter anymore.
Yeah. You don't even. Yeah, you can get out of an NLI. Just.
People hit transfer portal after they.
Yeah.
You could get out of an NLI with enough NIL.
Yeah.
So that's it. We'll end the show with this question from Paul Maher, whose slack ass could not be here. You get babies. I don't get it, But Paul says, I know y'all are missing me this week, but who is one guy already committed that just isn't getting the talk that he should? It happens every year. He is right. It does happen every year. One guy that maybe, I don't want to say we're taking him for granted that he's committed, but we're always looking to who the next guy is. Our whole show is, who did Georgia just get? Who did they miss on? Who might they get coming up? But if one of these guys was uncommitted and was announcing in a week, that's all we would be talking about. Yeah. So kind of go down the list. Give me a guy you think might be a guy.
I've said it constantly. I think it's Bo Walker. I don't think Bo Walker gets talked about enough. He was 5.63 star a couple weeks ago. I think he's moved up a little bit, but he's still not ranked in 250. He's really dang good. I think he's a lot better than what his ranking shows, and I think he's a player that Georgia really wants and can be a big-time contributor for Georgia.
I think it's kind of like, I don't know that Taylor gets enough hype just for being a top 30 player in the country. Like, I think people are so focused on CJ Wiley and Travis Smith
because they're here.
All these other guys that, again, the fact that you've got a top 30 receiver that plays in Illinois gets forgotten about. He's the number 6, I think, receiver in the country, and he's really
in a heavier receiver class.
Yeah, and he's just so well polished. He's a great route runner, great hands. I don't think the fastest guy in the universe, but just a guy that's just really, really, really. I'm very excited to watch him tomorrow because obviously none of us have ever seen him because he's in Illinois. So, but just the fact that Georgia's got a top 30 receiver, top 30 overall player in the country at receiver, I think kind of goes under the radar.
I think if he was like the number 3 wide receiver sitting at 29, people would be a lot more excited. But the fact, well, he's number 6.
Right.
Well, this is a gonzo class of wide receivers.
He's really, really, really good. And had like Ohio State was in for a while on him. Notre Dame, like some heavy. This isn't like a guy that just sort of that fell under their lap. They beat out some heavy hitters.
Yeah, I think it'd be Todd Robinson in my opinion. He's not even nationally ranked. Todd,
No one talks about Todd Robinson.
Yeah, and when I went to go see him in Valdosta, I mean, obviously, I think you went and saw him too. I watched his tape, but he's a lot bigger in person. But I mean, you talk about versatility. He's quarterback, he's running back. He can line up out a receiver. He played Shelton Felton, their head coach, Valdosta. He's like, I use him at Star sometimes, and this is the same Shelton Felton that coached Chris County and coached Quay Walker. He coached, and Todd can also play safety or cornerback. I mean, you talk about a guy that I think Georgia's recruiting as a DB. He could very well end up being like we joked earlier, but seriously, like Georgia's second running back in this class, just because I mean, and he does all of that at a 7A school. Not a lot of
the 7A school.
Yeah, like you talk about
the school.
Yeah, like Titletown, like they have the most. I don't know if it's state championships in Georgia, but maybe in the country.
Yeah.
So I mean, and he does, and not many 7A players play both ways, but he does.
Those are all good answers. They're all wrong, but they're all good answers. Elias Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Generational player, and I hate to say that after Georgia just had a generational tight end, but I mean, from what I'm hearing about this kid and what he can do,
special.
6'8", just the body that he has, the control he has, this could be. I mean, we are spoiled rotten covering some great tight ends. This year's going to be a little tough, and that's not to say anything against Oscar Delp. We covered him many times. Lawson Lucky's going to be really good. The Stanford tight end, we've heard nothing but great comments about him. But you could see the drop off when you didn't have a.
He's a difference maker.
Well, no, I mean, not when you didn't have who was with Brock Bowers. Darnell.
Yeah.
When you didn't have Darnell and it was just Brock,
That's true.
it made it tough. Brock couldn't be Brock without him out there as much. So we saw it was a lot harder. Now you're going to be without both of them. Now you're with good, but you're not with elite. Darnell Washington is an elite tight end. Brock Bowers is the elitist of the elite, maybe the best ever in college football.
Yeah.
Elias coming in. And again, I think maybe it's because he's a Georgia kid. If this was another 6'8" tight end coming in from California who did crazy videos during COVID, we'd be like, holy crap, there'd be a lot more buzz. But I'm like, don't take for granted that you may have. He may be the jewel of the class.
Yeah.
You know, so
he's a unicorn. I mean, just watching him block Daniel Calhoun last year in that
Who
state semifinal.
who may be the best lineman Georgia had in a few years.
Yeah,
So
but then this was back when Daniel Calhoun was like 360, 370.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's 100 pounds less, but they look like two dinosaurs. Seriously, so big.
Anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. We appreciate you joining us at an odd time, but there's so much going on here. Be sure to follow Lance and Trent and Jed on Twitter. Lance even has a new Twitter feed. He's been hacked. But follow these guys. There's going to be so many updates. We also have Patrick Garvin here and Bobby Andrews. Bobby's going to be doing a lot of videos. Patrick's, of course, doing all of his stories and stuff. He's got a good one out on the fact that it's not over for CJ Wiley. The things he said. Dane Young has the quotes. Patrick wrote them up. That's not over. And if anybody's going to take Trent, if Trent doesn't say it's over, it's not over. So he's been right all the time. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. Join us. And, of course, now if somebody does commit in the next few days, you know, if Arnaud picks George tomorrow, we'll go live. So be sure that you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff so that when we go live, you get notified. Okay? We'll talk to you later.